Start off by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land and unborn people and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And it's my great pleasure tonight to welcome Daniel Pett. Daniel, who is currently the head of Digital and IT at the Fitzwilliam Museum, the principal museum at the University of Cambridge. He's been there for just under a year, having previously worked for the British Museum for 15 years after several years working in investment banking technology in the City of London. During his tenure at the British Museum, he led the technical vision of the Portable Antiquities Scheme and developed their online database of over 1.4 million objects, and was then the digital humanities lead and worked with Google, Oculus and others on a variety of public engagement projects. He's worked on projects ranging from crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, linked open data, and is now PI on 7 concurrent grants. And he's written, in brackets, what a fool. That is not my or that is his. With an emphasis on 3D technologies and open source. And today he's going to talk about how you can replicate some of the projects that he has worked on. He's open to questions during the talk, and he's happy for you to interrupt him if you want more explanation. So on that note, I'll hand over to Dan.
Thank you very much, Katrina. You wouldn't think that I read that introduction at all, would you? So I usually speak quite fast. So if I do speak too quickly or I start mumbling, please say, and I'll slow down and try and be a bit easier to understand. So today I'm going to speak for about 40 to 45 minutes, or at least that's the aim. I might be a little bit quicker, I might be a little bit over, depending on whether you ask questions. There will be some video, and there's some audio with it as well. Everything in this talk can be tweeted about if you want to. If you want any of the assets afterwards for anything you want to present on in the future, please say, I'll give them to you freely. And I'll put the talk on Google Drive. It's around a gigabyte in size, so we'll be difficult to download. So I'll put a PDF up as well. So I'm going to try and go through a journey of different things. So I'm going to think about open museum and digital and how the ideology might be something you can take on board, or you might be doing already. And I'm not saying I'm the only person doing much of this work, because most of the time I've been inspired by other people. I've been inspired by people like Turkey, who I've known for far too long. I met Turkey on the internet. This sounds a bit weird. A long time ago, Turkey was looking for a job, and she said, I'd like to work in the British Museum. You might not have told people about this, Turkey.
Yeah, secret shame. Or it was secret.
It was secret.
No, it's just a shame, right?
Yeah. So she said, I want to work in the British Museum. She came to see me, and about 3 months later, she started working there in a job. Nothing to do with me. I just introduced her to new people. And then she became my tenant, which she might have told people about as well. And that was a bit weird.
Secret.
And then I didn't introduce her to Jeff, so that wasn't my fault. So I'm going to try not to be too boring. If I am boring, you're quite welcome to leave. I don't mind if people walk out halfway through talks. Happens quite a lot. And then you might recognise this young lady on the tour. So a few of the projects we've worked on together have been in museums. This one is in the Metropolitan Museum in New York. This is Turkey's favourite t-shirt. You rock, you rule. You might see her in this walk around campus quite soon. You've probably forgotten about that t-shirt today.
No, I wore it last week.
Have you washed it?
No, you touched it once.
And I've also taken a lot of inspiration from people you might have heard from recently. So Graham Earl came across last week, and apparently went out drinking until 2 in the morning. Graham doesn't really do that normally. He loves to stay in. He used to be twice the size of this man as well. He's lost so much weight recently. We went to Japan and went to something called Team Lab. And this is an installation of light bulbs. He went through this and was in wonder for hours. We could not get him out. We were in there for 2.5 hours waiting for Graham to come out of this stupid room. But he wants to bring this sort of stuff to museums, light installations and wonder. And that's something that I want to think about. But I've also been inspired by people like Sean Graham. And some of you might have come across Sean. He goes by the name of Electric Archaeologist on Twitter. He produces lots of guides about how you can do things. He's very clear and he explains things. He fails regularly and he documents failure. And that's a common theme I want to think about. What do you learn from in life? It's failure. It's not the things that you get right. And that's something I want you to think about as I talk through this. A lot of the projects I've worked on, we've failed at early stages of it, and we've learned something from it, and we've documented it and told people, so that we don't make the same mistake next time. And that's quite an important thing when you're working with computers, that someone might have found that problem before, and they tell you that problem is there. So seeing Kit's class the other day in VR, they're learning from each other, and they've failed in certain tasks, and that's the important thing. They've been telling each other it didn't quite work. But missing that's quite hard though. And other things I've learned from are things like the Michigan State University Digital Archaeology Institute, and that was run by Lynn Goldstein, who some of you might know, and Ethan Wottrell. And that was really inspiring. They had 25 students for 2 summers who came for a week together, and they're given a programme of work to do. They produced a digital project over 1 summer, and then work on it for a year, and then come back for the next year and refine it with staff and get to a point where they went to production. And it was amazing that 23 out of 25 got to that point in delivery. 2 dropped out because of ill health, otherwise it would have been 100% of the people who went on that course. And I also went to an institute in New York, Turkey came as well, the Ancient World Data Institute. And that group has become really, really close-knit. We're now doing projects together, we're working together, and we've actually inspired each other to do new things. And we've documented stuff. And this is another key thing I want to think about, documentation of what you're doing, so that people, when you leave, or you get run over by a bus, can still do the work in the future. But I also want to think about how museums can be portrayed to different people. So this is my daughter going to the Classical Archaeology Museum in Cambridge, and she's emulating what she sees in there. This is what you should be doing, inspiring people. It should be about participation. So if you haven't read Nina Simon's work from Santa Cruz Museum, it's really worth reading. Talking about how people can participate in museums. This is my daughter again. I'm just going to play this video, so give it a sound. So I'm just thinking about magic museums. You go to the museum and you get inspired. Or do you get inspired? Is it an inspiring space? And are the things that you're seeing making you want to come back? Now, children, if they have a bad time in a museum, will never go back there. If they get shouted at by the docents or the guards, they get worried about what's going on. And they'll go back 10 years later or 15 years later with their family and go, I don't want to go in that museum. Now, I've seen this experience happening in Fitzwilliam Museum where I work, where children have been treated badly by people who work there. We have a fantastic learning team, but not everyone tolerates children very well. And they get shouted at for standing on chairs or touching objects. They get a bad experience, but you can get around that sort of thing by making things for them to do. And I want to think of one other thing, and this is quite a good quote from Steve Blank. And museums are very, very bad at this. They build things without thinking about an audience, about who's actually going to use the resources. We're all guilty of that with our projects quite often. We've got money, so we just build it and think we're going to find an audience, and people will start using it. Sometimes it happens, and most of the time it doesn't. Linked data is a very good case in point for this, that people think there's a need for it, and they build these projects, and no one comes back to it. We had a bit of an argument last night about Europeana in the pub. Tony thinks it's fantastic, I don't think it's so great. Was that boo?
Yes, I booed you.
You did boo me quite loudly yesterday. But that one has had quite a lot of audience research, but no one is using the platform when you look at the audience figures, because people are still going to the institutions where the data's held. Is that because the institution got a bigger draw for the information? Or is it just Europeana has not had the right publicity or the right architecture for people to find it? And these are the questions you should be asking people who might be using it. And what I think we should also be looking for is striving for a very high quality experience. Something that's low maintenance but has some interactivity, make people come back and use it. Seeing Kit's class yesterday, they're using open source tools, things that you could take away and reuse for yourself and learn from and emulate. This interactive is from Cleveland Museum of Art. This is quite an expensive installation when you think about it. There's lots of screens, it's interactive, and it can go wrong regularly. Now, I'm not a great fan of putting screens into galleries, because when you walk around, you see half the time things are broken. They've been worn out because people have been pushing them the wrong way. And I've run a couple of projects with Google where we had handsets on strings that came out with a roller to bring them back into the slot. That broke within a week, but we could not afford to buy another one. So you try and find things that are low maintenance, and maybe use a supercomputer that you might have in your pocket. Now, I guess all of you have got one of these. Possibly. Some people might have very old phones, like Tony, because you can't install new things on. But you could start doing bring your own device type equipment, where people go to museums, they can download before they get there, or when they get into the building, or free Wi-Fi. My museum does not have free Wi-Fi, and it is really stifling the work that we can do. To put it in is really hard work. Our building is built in the turn of the 19th, 20th century. It's full of asbestos. We can't get it out very easily. We need huge amounts of money to do that sort of work. And then you walk into some museums as well. Does anyone recognise this museum? Pett Rivers, that's correct. You walk into this is overwhelming, the amount of information. How do you interpret this sort of information if you've got no idea what you should go and look at? The museum tries to give you pointers, but how could you help people to get around this building? And that could use digital technology. It could use analogue technology. But to think about a mesh of the two. And Pett Rivers is now doing some really inspiring things as well. They're doing things like contactless donations, which is going to change the role of money making in museums. And that's been inspired by cathedrals in the UK. And they're making a fortune now. I went to a presentation the other day and someone's talking about an offertory plate that's going around in church with a contactless reader in it. So people are going around the aisle and taking people's cards and tapping them on the donation plate. Such a weird concept. They're just raising money. So, Tony, I'm sorry I put you on screen again. So I want to think about some things that the museum or GLAM sector could be. And I've said about one of them already, is participation. And then there's about serendipity as well. You don't quite know what people are going to do with your resources, which conflicts with the quote that I came up with earlier about building it and will they come strategy. But you do not know what people will do with your equipment, with your things, with what you're building. Some people might use it for different objects or different purposes. And they can be innovative. And I hope that it might be world-leading, that you do things that only your museum can do. And I hope they're going to come and see your museum and think that when I come across later next week. And above all, I think you've got to be open about what you're doing and tell people why you're doing certain things. So why we might repatriate objects and use it back to the community is really important. Be transparent about it, not just hide it away in documents that says we're giving it back, but reasoning why we've done something. So I used to work here. This is the British Museum. I left there in 2018 when they closed down the British Humanities programme. So I got made redundant from a programme that I've been working on for less than 18 months. I wasn't quite sure why they closed the programme down. We was doing some quite interesting things. We had no budget. We were still building nice things for the community and for the public. And we did things like this. We made 3D handling objects for sex education tours. We did this free of charge. There was no cost to the museum to do this sort of stuff. We were releasing the data to the public to reuse. So I've now moved to this place. It's also quite similar looking to where I used to work. It's a traditional type museum. It's Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge. It's got a similar ethos within it, but my ethos for work has not changed since I left the British Museum. So I always base myself around an open philosophy. So open data, open source technology, and open science. And I use tools like R and Python, stuff that people can use without having to pay for it. Now, I try not to spend money. I like to spend money for myself. I try not to spend money for where I work, because I know that I'm never going to get an extra round of funding the next time. So I try and get small amounts of money for work and spend that on staff instead. I want to develop people's skills and the way they work, rather than I want to spend it on technology that will die in about 2 years' time, so that we can transfer it to new things. Has anyone ever seen this before? I know you've seen it, Turley. You've seen it as well. So this is the Gartner Hype Cycle, and this is the last iteration of 2018. I think there's a new one now. I couldn't find it this morning when I was looking. A little bit jet lagged, not quite sure what I'm doing. So this gives you an idea of where things might be coming in the future. So you have things like mixed reality, augmented reality. Now, has anyone here been to a museum using augmented reality yet? No.
We have a small amount of AR.
Okay. And is it very popular with the public?
Well, it's only implemented in a very light way, so the inner complements one of our exhibitions. So I don't know if I would say it's very popular.
So I think in the UK we're not seeing very much of it yet, but it's going to become more mainstream over time. Much more than virtual reality will be in a museum space because of the throughput of visitors and the amount of time that people have. There's quite an interesting discussion on Twitter at the moment about time budget that Seb Chan's been talking about. That visitors come to a museum with a very limited amount of time, and what they're actually going to spend their time doing. It's not about money anymore, in many ways. It's about what they want to do and what they want to get out of it. I don't think VR is a bad thing at all. I'm not knocking VR in that way. It's about certain things, like how many people can use it at one time. And most of the time, museums can't afford more than one headset. So they've got one headset that dangles from the ceiling. They might have to have 2 people to get people on board. Then they have to do risk assessments about people putting the headset on, getting dizzy and falling over. And then they have to clean it afterwards because people can transfer skin conditions to the headsets as well. All these things that the management don't know very much about, but they have to think about. I think VR could become part of museums' armory. It just needs a bit more thought from museums about how they get into it. And quality products, that's the other thing. Some of the museum VR I have seen is not particularly good. And I also base my work around Creative Commons licensing as well. And I know that's very much used in Australia and New Zealand and around the world. But people are very scared about Creative Commons still. They think when you use a license like this, you're giving away your copyright. So I keep explaining to my management staff that we can put stuff out under Creative Commons license. We retain our copyright. And we can do different variations of content under this license as well. We retain the largest files, but we could put out a medium res one under a very open license. Doesn't mean you've got access to the full one, but you still license things different ways. And earlier I mentioned about bus factor. And I think this is really, really important for people who work in the museum sector. Now, how many of you work in a team of one? Anyone who works in a team of one? Kids. So if you disappear, what would happen to your course?
Smash.
Stop. So this is very much what's happening with the work I did at the British Museum. I was a team of one doing this work. Everyone kept saying, there's a bus factory, if you disappear, we can't replicate your work. My response was, I documented everything I did, and people could read it and pick it up. So this is an important thing to think about as well. If one person retains the knowledge, are they going to lose it by you leaving the organisation? How do you keep that knowledge going? So I'm now going to go through a few projects I've worked on. And these are all documented on GitHub, open source technology. So the first one I worked on, the British Museum, is the Portable Antiquities Scheme database, which has now ticked over 1.4 million objects in the last 2 weeks. This is a huge database of objects the public are finding through metal detecting. I'm not quite sure the laws of metal detecting in Australia, but in the UK it's legal for you to go out detecting and find archaeological objects, unless they meet with a law called treasure. Kat knows a lot about this through her work with Neil Wilkin at the British Museum. But many people go out with a detector. When I say many people, there's about 18,000 detectorists registered on the system. There's 66 million people in the UK, so it's not a huge proportion. There's still a lot of people destroying archaeological context and bringing objects up. They try to mitigate that damage by recording them on this database, which is completely open to the public. It's an open database with open source technology. You could download this database's source code and create one for Australia if you wanted to, using that code. It's slightly out of date now because I haven't worked on it for 4 years. And this is very much a story of discovery, this website. It tells you about the stories of people finding objects, where they came from, and what they might want to do with these things. You can do visualizations with those tools as well, so you can show where objects came from. This data is available to the public to reuse in many different ways, so people can start using it. Serendipity is very key to this project. That data can be downloaded, and you never know what researchers might do with this information. They might use R or Python and do some machine learning on this sort of stuff. You've got 500,000 images, which you can start doing things like coin recognition. And all that data is out there for people to play with, and they're freely allowed to use it. And we've also worked with open data as well. So how many people in here use Wikipedia once a week or more? A few people over here, a few people there. And you can now start enriching websites with that data, which is what Turkey teaches about regularly. I find linked data lectures quite hard to go to, because quite often people talk about modelling and how they get from point A to B. They don't really show you the use case about how it impacts on the public very often. And this is one thing where you think about how you write biographies of people. Someone's already done that on Wikipedia, and you're sort of wasting your time by doing it again. Go onto Wikipedia and edit that instead, and then pull that data back into your platform, used from Wikipedia's API sort of system, which is linked data. So on these records, we add an identifier for each one. So Wikipedia, Learning plus Commodus. So all this data is being pulled back by a Sparkle query, which pulls data straight back out of that. And when someone like Turkey goes and edits that page, that goes into DBpedia or Wikipedia, and that updates that page. So you can think about the web as a content management system instead, not you running a content management system. So you're devolving access to resource and making it better for other people. And then a few years later, I had a grant with a chap called Andy Bevan, who's at UCL. Now, he's quite famous in archaeological circles for his data research. And he had this idea that we could harness the public to do crowdsourcing and make them do the menial tasks. This is how he described it, the menial tasks in museums that you don't want to do yourself. That's quite a key thing for museum people. It's time. Time is really poor for people who work in museums. You have the public coming to see you, you've got research you want to do, you've got admin. You have far too many emails that you'd rather delete. So you think about how you can get people to help you. So we came up with a crowdsourcing platform, which is called Micropass, and this is still running. And any of you can use this if you wanted to run projects for yourselves as well. You can learn how to do it, there's code out there, you can do examples. And we've done things like transcription, we've done things like photo modelling to make 3D models. We've done various tasks. Now I mentioned Neil Wilkin earlier. He's the Bronze Age archaeologist at the British Museum. He had an index card box of 30,000 records, which are based about 5 miles away from the British Museum. If you work in a museum, you know quite often if you have an index system, you have to supervise people when they go and look at it. And only one person at a time can go and look at that system. They only had them on paper, and it wasn't a secure filing unit. If it got burned, that was the end of that record. So it's like, how do we make it digital? And someone said to Neil, could you do it yourself? And he said, well, it's going to take me about 13 years to go through that by myself. The public did them in 13 months. That was 5 times per card. And we wrote a computer script that went through and amalgamated that data together and made sure it was correct. We then passed it on to Neil, who in theory has now gone through and checked it. I know Neil, and you know Neil, he hasn't got that far yet, because he's got other things to do now. He's moved on to his next project. But the public can now download all that data, and they can manipulate it in the way they want to. We were talking yesterday about machine learning. You could take that data, and you could start playing with it and say, look Neil, there's these patterns you haven't seen before. You could draw maps, so Kat could start doing maps with it. You could do all sorts of stuff that Neil hasn't thought of, because that data is now open and available. And one of the key points about what we did for this project was everything we did, we put onto GitHub. And I hope that some of you might use GitHub in this room. And I'm going to come on to what I'm trying to do with creators shortly with GitHub. Every application you put on that website is up here with source code and instructions about how to create it again. You could see one of these and think, that's very like the project I want to do. I could take the source code and make it bend to what I want to do. You could write to me or Andy or Kiara, who's the other researcher who works there, and say, I'd like to put a project up on your platform. Can you give me admin rights to do that? And we'll invariably say yes. You can't break it. It's just impossible to break. You break your source code, you can't break the platform overall. And all these projects are really highly documented. So we do code snippets with actual documentation of the license, copyright, and who built it. We say where things came from and what tasks you have to do. And then we give access to the data sets as well. So when we complete a project, the data either goes to something called the archaeological data service, if applicable, and we've got money to do that, or it goes into institutional repositories. Do you have an institutional repository here? And is it very well used? That's not really, you send them there going, I don't know. So you put anything into it?
I've technically emailed people to ask them to put stuff in it for me.
That sounds very like you. So Turkey was very good at emailing me and saying, can you help me? And I always will. So making projects on this system is quite straightforward. It's HTML5 and JavaScript. It takes less than 5 minutes to deploy a project to microclasses. Building a project can take you less than an hour, so you can get things up and running. Jeff, you can program. You could get stuff up in here very easily by just looking at the JavaScript and go, that's simple. I can make this work. So you can do something that's not archaeologically related or museum related and put it onto this platform if you wanted to. Or you could download the source code for the program, which is called PyBosser, which is built out in Madrid. And you can run your own system for crowdsourcing based around, say, banking technology, or something you thought might be altruistic, but probably isn't with this banking technology. And it's all about partnership with who we could work with. So the idea was that we work with lots of different organisations. So we partnered with the Egypt Exploration Society, Personal Exploration Fund, Magic Mountain Research Organisation, various different people. And they've all got something out of it. Only one project has failed, as far as I'm concerned. That's translation of German texts from prisoners of war. Because we can't find enough people who can read German and want to spend enough time going through these texts translating. Otherwise, generally, they've worked. So this is an example of one of the projects for the Egypt Exploration Society. And this is from the city of Akhenaten, one of the excavations they did. It's very, very structured. So these cards generally have structured data on them. But OCR doesn't work particularly well because the handwriting gets worse and worse as you go through the index cards. Or they start doing drawings over top of them. So what we're asking the public to do is to transcribe text into certain boxes to make it a structured database. We can upload it to an Excel spreadsheet and we can then pull that data out and put it into a proper relational database later on. And I know that 3D is now becoming quite a big emphasis for here. Now we were talking this morning on it. What do you really hate doing? We talked about photo masking and how repetitive it is and boring. So we did this as what Andy termed a menial task. We put photo masks up on the internet and asked people to draw around objects to make a photo mask. They did this. Generally they got it quite accurate. There was just one user who thought photo mask was just drawing a box around the object. But you can write algorithms that suppress the work they did. And they can work with the other topics they're really good at. So that person was fantastic at transcription, but useless at this. So you can do weighting to work out where bad data is coming from. And that produced objects like this. So Kat, you know what one of these is. Does it excite you? I hate prehistoric objects.
I'm a suitable specialist.
So it doesn't excite you, I sound maybe not interested. But, right. So we built a 3D viewer online using 3JS. But we soon realised we had very few features that you couldn't get elsewhere. And no one was looking at our work. So going back to that quote I had earlier on about building something and thinking an audience would come to it, I was guilty of it with Andy. We decided we'd build our own viewer. I think people would come see our resources. We got about 100 people a week looking at these. So we went off to find a viable large-scale platform, which was Sketchfab, which I know that you're using here for your display of your work. And they have 2 million registered users now. So our work could go out to an audience of 2 million, potentially. We know 2 million people won't see it, but there's a possibility they might by that platform. They're running the architecture to keep that server going as well. They've got new features that are coming online every week. We could not keep up with that sort of thing. So we went where the people were going. That was what we thought about with this. And you can pull that content back into our website through the embedding API. And that's really important. You can take stuff back off it again as well. Now this is something about Google, which I might come to a bit later. So if anyone uses Google's arts and culture, they've got a fantastic platform with really interesting information on it. But you can't take the information back off their website and put it onto yours. There's no way of pulling data off. So it's a bit of a silo. You could say they're asset stripping. They're doing quite a good thing when they're getting data out. But you have to think about the merits of what they're up to. Is it for their benefit or is it for your museum? Now this might work. I'm going to try and put some sound off from Pinot. So this is one of the projects I worked on with Google, and this is the Google Creative Lab based in Sydney. And I was just mentioning to Sergey, they'd be the ideal collaborators for here, in this area, because they're based around this region. They do interesting altruistic stuff for museums. So we had an installation in Gallery 3, which is a temporary room, and it had 100,000 people go to it in just under 2 months. And we wanted people to be able to use their mobile phones to control interactive in the exhibition. Not using a pointer, and not using an app that you download, it was just on the Wi-Fi network. So they took their phones into the exhibition, they connected to Wi-Fi, and they then activated their phone, and they could make these hotspots on the picture at the back active, and they could turn around the object as well. Now, going back to what I mentioned earlier about the VR, only one person at a time could control the turning over, but up to 25 people could be looking at hotspots at once. And they're interactive on the wall as well, with videos. So I can play you 2 videos now, and I hope these are clear enough. Right, that sounded driving crazy. I was about 3 hours standing in that room being a docent, and he did. We had an engineer called Jude from Google who went absolutely mad. He spent 3 days in that room with the sound going like that. He said, I've just got to turn it off, I can't deal with that.
Is that him on the right there?
No, that's not him on the right, but you could say it. So just going back to that video a second ago. So you saw the mouse was going backwards and forwards, and there was a line drawing down from the spot you were interacting with. That was giving you context about that object. So it's basically like reading a label, but making you feel like you had an agency over what you were doing in that room. But the agency is actually quite lacking, because we've predefined what you're going to do. And there's only so many hotspots you could find. So the other thing we had were 4 videos of disciples, or people who went to this shrine. I'm not going to play all of this, because it's a bit long, so about 4 minutes. Let's go for about 2 minutes of it, so I'll jump ahead. So this is the inactive state. So they're greyed out. This is showing you they're not active at the moment. You then took your mouse and pointed it over the top. Your mouse is your mobile phone, and that activates the person. There's a little icon that went round.
I awoke this morning with a longing to be near the Buddha, the enlightened one. So I came out through the city gates to visit the great shrine. Entering this holy place is like basking in the glow of a full moon in a jasmine-scented garden. I hear the chant.
Right, so that's enough of her talking. So you're probably going to ask how much this sort of interactive cost for the British Museum to build. The answer was nothing in terms of outlay for the museum, apart from staff time. Google donated their time pro bono to the project, but they estimated it was around $350,000 Australian dollars to work on it, because the amount their engineers get paid. It took us 10 months to get to the point where this went live. Now that 10 months really should have been about a month and a half. The BM dithered so much over contract terms and the risk and what we were doing, and whether we conflicted with the sponsor, which we were telling them all the way along that Google weren't sponsoring it, but no one was listening. It took 10 months to get to that point. And it was nearly a week before it went live where Google were almost about to pull it and say, we're not participating anymore, because they played hardball with it, and then suddenly went, okay, we'll get to the point we can go live. Now, if you wanted to use that, you probably say, can we replicate that? And that's the whole point of this lecture. It's about, can you replicate it? And the answer is, yes, you could try and replicate this for yourselves. So the source code that runs this is available on GitHub. You could download it and find a talented engineer who can do JavaScript, something called React, which a lot of people can do now. And they could manipulate this and create something like that for your museum as well. And we have all the source code for one at the British Museum with all the assets in it as well, which you could run locally so you could actually play with it in a room. We can't do it here because it's not the right shape, it's the sort of horseshoe shape. And one of the things I was really keen on is making sure that Digital Humanities touched lots of curators in the British Museum. The BM has a huge number of staff. Where I work now at the Fitzwilliam, we have 154 staff, and each curatorial department we have 5. There's about 2 curators working. So there's about 10 people I can work with potentially. So I'm trying to go outside that and find collaborators in the wider university to work with. And I know that's what you're trying to do as well, it's like find an audience to work with. So this is some of the examples of curators I work with, and you might recognise some names if you work in museums, possibly won't. And we did other projects as well, like audio guides as well. So people were going out and taking an audio guide, and they wanted to find out what they saw in a museum. And they got to the point where they couldn't do that very quickly. And I came back from parental leave, and they said, for my first project, could I build an API for them to send these emails out when people left saying what they'd seen? I was like, sure, we'll give it a try. And I built this in something called Zen Framework. The code for this is all available on GitHub as well. So you can do the same thing, you just need to know how the code works for the mobile phone guide. That's not open source. That project is now not run by anyone at the British Museum, and that code has died. So the product is only 2 years old and has already disappeared. And that worries me slightly, that the museum has got a product that disappears after 2 years, and they've invested a lot of money in it. And other things I've worked on as well, something called Oculus VR. And they made something that went onto Facebook. This was a 360-degree video of galleries, originally. Now, I also made lots of 3D models in my spare time, walking to my office. Anyone who knows me, who's worked at the British Museum, so Turkey will know this. You go through the front door, you walk through the Egyptian Sculpture Gallery, and then up the back staircase. So I had a complete bias for things I was making. But on my morning walk to work, I go to the Egyptian Sculpture Gallery, so I make Egyptian models. When I walk to the canteen, so the Roman Gallery, so I make Roman models in the afternoon coming back from lunch. And these would all go in Sketchfab, and I make open data of them. So with the 360-degree photos of this gallery, we enriched it with 3D models as well. So I'm going to try and make a video work now to show you what that looks like. So this is much more speeded up than you normally do. You go around the gallery and you click on the objects and it brings up a 360-degree model, and you turn it around and you can learn something about it. Because people quite often want to see the back. They want to know what the shape of the object is. 2D photos aren't great for reconstructing essay questions from. You sit there and look at it and go, I can't quite work out the details. 3D models are fantastic for this, because René could print you one. You could then take it to your office and you could turn it over and looking at it in three dimensions. 3D is not the answer to everything, but it's got some great applications. We're not quite sure what its true potential is yet. But Kit, your class could take all the 3D models we're producing, and you can make virtual museums as one of your class tasks, and that could potentially get someone a job in the future with a museum that's going, we want to do that sort of thing. So just going back to my current boat, which is Fitzwilliam. We don't get a huge amount of visitors. I don't know how this compares to your museum. We get 316,000, 350,000 visitors if you look at the timeline. British Museum gets around 6 million visitors a year. What's the general Australian museum? What's the good figure over here? Anyone knows?
1 million, probably, at the end of it.
Okay. And is that a good year, or is that just average?
That's average.
Okay. So in the UK, I said earlier, we've got 66 million people. We're struggling to get people through museum doors. Is that because we're not very welcoming? Now, I think our museum is pretty scary for people who walk past and don't know much about it. It looks like a Cambridge college. It looks really traditional. Am I allowed inside? When you walk through the front gate, there's a regulations board that tells you what you can and cannot do. Now, is that what you want to see as your first thing you go in? All children know that rules are there to be broken, so of course they want to do different things. So they need to think about the welcome. So they're now starting to do new things as well, like gallery installations outside. So these light shows and things like that, or making the museum look colourful. So ways to make people want to come through the door. But we're also trying to teach the public how to make 3D models as well. So I ran a workshop for 45 people, and we ran 2 hours at a time. We got down to about an hour and a half in the end. And I wrote some lessons which now appear on GitHub pages, which teach people how to make 3D models. So earlier we were just talking about 3D, and I said you could learn in about an hour. So you could go through these step-by-step instructions, and you could produce a 3D model really quickly. So you could find a sculpture in your local park, and you could make a 3D model with a camera. If you've got a mobile phone with a decent camera on it, not Turkey's iPhone 4 or whatever it is, then you could do a good 3D model really quickly, just follow these instructions. They're also doing quite innovative things as well, which are analogue, about people. This isn't one of my projects, we're doing things with lesbian and gay communities, where the public are doing tours for the museum. You could say they're being exploited by the public giving these tours. But they come along and said, we want to do this, we want to volunteer and try this out and see if it becomes an integral part of the museum culture. And people are loving it. And you've got straight people going on their tours as well. It's not just the audience they thought it might be. And they're really enjoying the stories they're hearing, finding out about new ways of understanding about these objects. They've also got a fantastic colour scheme about the way they're advertising as well, so it's drawing people in. Other things we're trying as well are pop-up museums. Now this is one that I ran, it's something called the Mozilla Festival. Around 2,500 people go to Ravenpool College in Docklands every year for 3 days. and they go to talk about the open web and how things might work. And last year we took a pop-up museum. So we took some objects that curators had made, 3D scans, sort of Shabtir Ramosi, which was made by Melanie Pitkin, who some of you might know. She used to be at Powerhouse Museum. And then we've got some 3D prints for learning as well. So down here we've got some African rock art, which were light enough for children to pick up and put above their heads so they could imagine what it would look like in a cave. So you could say, you would have seen it like this and the background would go like that. And then we've got an object that I made in my lunch break, which is a statue of Antinous. So 60 photographs of that object made that model. It is now being cast by a company called Think C3D, they're based in Oxford, and it's being sold at £250 a time as a resin cast by the British Museum. They've sold 40 of those so far. We know there's an appetite for these, because people quite often buy plaster cast of objects when they go to museums, things to decorate their house. The next step for me for that is to blow out to a much larger size, dip it in UV or make it yellow and put it in a nightclub so people can see museum content in a different environment. Just different ways of people interacting with our stuff. The museums are trying to get people to come in, and they want to see these sort of things. So if you've played Assassin's Creed, the latest version, the one before, there's a discovery tour in it. And so people from the Met Museum and the Louvre and places like that put museum content into that discovery tour. They now are seeing people go to the Met and the Louvre saying, I've seen this object in that game, where is it, can I see it? So museums can get on the bandwagon of games. It is a violent game, but think about the risk of it. People are playing it because they want to learn about history as well. And then my colleagues are now doing pop-up museums with real objects in places like this. This is a pub in Wisbech, which is in the Fens of Cambridgeshire. It's a non-traditional audience, which is really hard to get to. So they've taken Egyptian coffin parts out to these pubs in 3D prints. They allow people to handle the 3D prints while seeing the real object. And it's inspiring people who quite often can't read. And this is something that my curious colleagues have found quite challenging. They have people coming up to desk saying, I can't read this stuff, but I understand it when you give me an object to hold. And they're getting a different way of interaction. It's something you could do quite easily. And now moving on to what I'm trying to achieve with the web as well. So if you're a software engineer in this room, not sure if anyone is, you might have heard of something called Jekyll. And that's for making static websites really quickly. I was talking about this with Kat yesterday. So I'm now trying to teach curators how to make websites for themselves. So digital is not within a department, it's spread out across the museum. So my departmental team is now 11 people. I have one person who can do anything digital in terms of creating websites. I have 2 people who run IT, which is basically support servers and desktop. So digital is really hard for us to do. But you can teach your creator friends how to do this sort of stuff and give them new skills that they can then go off and make their own websites for themselves, or portfolio sites, or something interesting. We do very low cost digital. So this is an example of a site that one of my colleagues has built with a bit of help from me. We released about 2 weeks ago a site called EgyptianCoffins.org, and this has been built by the 2 curators for that department, which are Helen and Melanie. Down here you can see their contributions about what they've been putting on. So this is all hosted on GitHub for free. We're not spending any money at all on this website being hosted. It's its own domain name. It's really fast. It's well protected. It's on a different server, which is run by an outside company. And we put many of these up on this site, and all have them under their own domain name as well. But they're learning a new skill. They're delivering content for themselves. They can edit it for themselves. They feel enfranchised. They've now realised that building a website is actually a little bit hard work. When someone says to you, I want to have a website built, and they give you a PDF or a Word document and say, turn that Word document into a website. And they suddenly start thinking about linking, about what images they might need to do. And Melanie said she's learned so much in 2 weeks to get to this point. And she's really proud of this site. And that's something I want to get more of. The people who are proud of the web resources they create, rather than the 1998 type sites you can get from museums. I'm also allowing postdocs to learn how to do this as well. So I've got a grant from the HRC for 4 postdocs for 6 months. And they're looking at 3D technologies. So I said to them, you need to have a website built for this as well, that you're going to manage. So they've been taught the same thing, and templates use the same design as the one you saw before. So we're trying to do uniformity, that they learn how things work and they take control. And one of the projects we're working on is called Museum in a Box. Now this is originated by George Oates, who's Australian. And she used to work for Flickr and Yahoo and various other companies. And she's got this idea about taking objects out to different audiences within a plastic box containing a Raspberry Pi computer, which some of you may have seen before. They're about this big. They're not particularly high-end computers. They're quite easy to program. You can manipulate them the way you want. And she's attached that to an NFC reader. And the NFC tag is a little bit like the chip you've got on your card that you pay with. So when you go to contactless donation point or pay for your beer in the pub, put your thing on, it does something. So these objects have an NFC tag on the back of them. You touch it to the reader, and it reads content out, or plays a video, or does projection, or does whatever you've coded it to do. And then my students are trying to work out how they could do museum collections. So you could do one for your museum, you could do one for the museum down the road. You can mail it through people's boxes in a subscription model, trying to find ways of getting content out regularly. It's like a library lending service. And we're also thinking about projects, learning how to do this sort of work as well. So another HRC project I've got funded with has got 10 different partners. I want all of them to be able to edit the website. Now if you think about traditional museum IT or university IT, how do you get access? You go through one institutional IT team who say, well, they don't have an ID for this place, they can't get onto our system, so you're going to do all the work yourself. So we've distributed this via GitHub, giving them each an ID to that system, giving them permissions. They can now all edit this, make changes, and it's all audited. So if I don't agree with the change, and else in the other project lead doesn't agree, we can roll it back to what it used to look like with the click of a button. But they feel like they can take charge of this and change it. And these are just a few examples of 3D models that curators have made from learning those lessons that I showed you earlier. Now, these are 2 objects from our gallery of Egyptian objects in the Fitzwilliam Museum. These are both created by Melanie, who's one of our curators. And this was the first one she ever made. She made this and was overwhelmed when she saw how easy it was to make one. And the joy on people's faces when they realise they can make these objects themselves. And it's not mystical science. It's really what I want to do this work for. I want to make people feel that they can replicate what I can do. It's not magic. Going back to my daughter saying abracadabra, turn you into a frog. It's about making people feel magic can be done by them as well. And what the Coffin team is also doing, which might be a little bit harder for you to replicate unless you've got friends in a local hospital, is CT scanning objects. They're pushing things through the CT scanner to try and look at how they're built. So these Egyptian coffins, and they've worked out that Egyptian coffins are quite often reused. This is a quite weird concept for us. Coffins are being reused. So where the mummies go, they're being put somewhere else. But the coffin's been taken back and made shorter for a short burst, or made lengthened. But the CT scanning is showing where the joints are, and they can work out how they're being made. And they can go away and show that they have been reused. I think I made a mess there. That shouldn't be there, but never mind. So, just think about other things that you can do quite cheaply. Now, I'll go back to how much money I spent on actual infrastructure at the Fitzwilliam Museum this year. It's really small. We spent our license fees and the stuff we have, like Adobe Cloud, which we have to have because everyone wants Photoshop, things like that. There's some tools that you use for free. So we have an instant messaging system. Now, you might want to use something like Slack, but Slack comes at a price. Does anyone use Slack here? The projects, you people. So 10,000 messages is the most you can search through up to a point where you have to start paying. I could not get budget for my department to run that. So I went, what open source tool is out there that I can run? And can I host it for free? So I found something called Rocket Chat, and I went off to Amazon Web Services, and I signed up for an account for the free tier. We're running this for nothing for the first 750 hours a month. I shut it down overnight, so we never go over 750 hours. It's quite a cost-effective way to do it. Or you can use something called Amazon Lightsail, where you get a web server with full rights on it for $2.50 a month. So you can run projects really cheaply. You can turn them off and on, you can copy them and you can replicate them. So I could build an image of my website, I could give it to turkey or cat and say, here's how we set up our architecture, you can copy this. You can transfer the ownership to someone else. Some of you may have come across this chap if you've worked in Oxford, or just are a natural historian. And I think this is really important about 3D objects. Now, quite often we are starting to make 3D objects and print them, but we don't document why we've done it. And it becomes an object that sits in the cupboard. Someone leaves and you suddenly find it and go, why have we done this and what's it for? And I think this is an important point, that we have to remember about documenting what we're doing with the steps. So I was talking to Renee earlier about metadata or paradata about choices you made. So we're decimating an object or making it smaller. And I said, well, we're going to reduce it in size from 9 million faces to 4.5 million. Why do we make that choice? That's because we wanted to render faster on the printer. If you don't say why you're doing certain things and what choices you made with your equipment, people can't replicate what you're going to do. And I think that's a really important thing. And this comes out in the London Charter, which Graham Earl was one of the architects for. No one quotes the London Charter anymore. It's sort of failed, but it's really important for 3D visualization. And this is an example of a mesh of an object. So this is the first model ever created. And then these are some 3D prints that come around from these objects. And they're in colour. How many of you have ever seen a 3D colour print before? I've normally seen plastic. Not many of you? Renee, have you seen this type of print before? So these are quite high end, they're made of gypsum, and they have a dye inserted at the final stage. They look realistic. You could put those out in a gallery and people could touch them and they think, actually that looks like a real object, rather than those lightweight plastic prints that you can pick up and throw to each other. These ones have got weight, feel to them, and temperature. And that's the really important thing. Senses, visuality and authenticity. Authenticity is really, really key for 3D work, about trying to make people understand what it is. It's the same with our writing. You have to be authentic and have a good voice behind it. I've been very fortunate to work with some objects like this. So this is the Rosetta Stone. I was talking to René about how I was asked to do 3D objects most of the time. And it was usually someone saying, the day before, you've got half an hour to go in the gallery and take a 3D model of this, so we want to put it on our blog. And that's the case in point with the Rosetta Stone. They told me the night before, so I turned up, straight off my bike, that's why I'm wearing portable white socks and looking a bit ruffled. But I got in the case of the objects. And then I found out you could not get around the back of it, because the case is too small. So I had to take pictures through the glass. Now, I cheated a little bit as well. We have a replica of these objects in the British Museum in the Enlightenment Gallery. I couldn't get to the top right-hand corner very easily, right at the back, because I couldn't get focal length. And I couldn't get to the bottom. So I went to the Enlightenment Gallery and I took photos from that and stitched the two models together. So I just talked about authenticity. So the 3D model I created is authentic. Well, it's authentic to a point. But I've told you how I did it. That's the reason. So you now know what choices I made to get to that point. And I think that's really important, that you can then go, that's not the real model. And you can say why it's not the real model. Now I also talked about high quality data as well with René this morning. So this gives an example of decimation. So going from left to right, this is a model that I created, and it was decimated by Thomas Flint from Sketchfab. This is 1,000,000 places, so this is quite high quality. On the left it's gone down to 1,000. You can see it goes really blocky. But when you put the texture on the outside, it can still look as fantastic as this one on the right hand side. But the actual shape is not great. Now, Kit, which one would you use for your work? You'd use that one on the left, wouldn't you?
Well, for the VR stuff.
Yeah, for VR.
But for high-end 3D, I'm
Yeah.
using the other one.
So it's use case as well. But I was talking to René about this morning. What do people want to do with the 3D objects, or the things you're doing in museums? You need to know what people want to use your assets for, and be very clear about what things you're going to do. So if you're doing contract for services, in your delivery thing, say you're going to deliver it a certain style, and that you can sign it off at that level as well. So you don't ever argue over things. It's a bit like buying a house. You have to be sure about what you're getting, otherwise it can be a nasty surprise. And one thing I'll keep coming across, people keep saying that 3D documentation is preserving objects. It definitely isn't. It's not a substitute for the real thing. And it's something that keeps coming up over and over again. And Google are quite naughty about this. They keep saying they're preserving the world's heritage. And Jens gets very irate by this. And every time they do this, he does this sort of thing. And I agree with him. So just like slightly negative side, I think there is a skills dearth in our sector, that people aren't learning enough digital technology skills. And this is where people like you come in, Tony and Kat, and the stuff projects you're doing, and you, Kit, and other people in this room, trying to find people that want to learn this technology, making it easy for them to learn, and finding examples of people who can inspire them. And that's the really important thing, that you can find people who can show them what they can do. And that can be quite hard to do. Some people aren't very accessible. So my other plea for people is to try talking about their work and be generous with your time. It's like a generous interface on your museum website. Give people the information they need rather than just the Spartan bits, like go, here's an object, here's a coin. That's not used to anyone. Make it more interesting, like there's a coin of Vespasian that's come from this place. That sort of thing. So there is light at the end of that tunnel. And I finished, and that was 40 minutes.
Great, thank you. Are there questions?
So you mentioned running a website from GitHub.
Yep.
So
How do you do
it's
it?
to register the domain name and all that.
So you register the domain name with the registrar, and then you put your code onto GitHub, and you go into the back end of their system, which is under settings, and there's a bit option called GitHub pages, GH pages, and that you say which branch of your site you want to run it from. You choose the branch, and activate it straight off. You then go to the index HTML file, and it appears as a website. There's now a setting that says, have you got a custom domain name? And you choose that domain name, and it maps it to the website. You can deploy a website in less than an hour this way, if you've got a good registrar. I can show you tomorrow or another day if you'd like to see how to do it properly. That's a bit of a bad explanation, but it can be really quick.
Wow.
There's loads of, I think for your students this could be ideal, because they could get stuff up really quickly. And you can, say, have a project website that's live to the world, and they can see anywhere. And you can be really proud of your students and say, look, my students have done this. And you can show me in the UK, whereas other times it could be like sharing a SharePoint, or something I can't access to very easily. But I'll show you if you want to.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation.
You mentioned the importance of learning from failure, but in your presentation it was all quite seamless. I didn't get a sense of there being big failures. And I'm just wondering, where were your big failures and what did you learn from them?
So the Portable Antiquities site is a very good case in point. So when I started working on that, the company that ran it went bust. So I couldn't program at that point. So I decided to learn so I could do it. We had no budget to redo it. So I went through 3 or 4 iterations where it didn't quite meet the standards I wanted to get to. I documented what I was up to and I was like, I need to get better. I learned from that failure and there's a blog post saying this didn't work and this didn't work. The Google project with the Room 3, we failed on many levels getting that going. So it iterated about 5 times. This is quite a key thing as well. The museums need to iterate to a point. Things are never finished on the digital side. You can always get better until your funding runs out, then you have to stop. But I think some things we did on that. When we first started, one of the ideas was that it was going to be a discovery thing where people came along with their mobile phone and they'd brush away dirt to find the object. And we're like, that's a bit naff, really, or twee, like we could do better than that. And then it came up with another idea that we didn't like as well. And then they came up with videos at different points. We used tested for people. So we failed a few times with that. Oh, this is sort of constructive failure. And then there's a couple of projects that we've done on crowdsourcing where we tried to do something with technology and then realised that actually we couldn't do that with open source. So we had to scrap it. We didn't actually go live. So sometimes failure we haven't documented openly to the public, we've documented internally. So lessons can be learned. So what else have I messed up? Apart from all the coming here last year, I messed that up, didn't I?
Oh, you're here now. It was just an example of those ones that takes longer.
Yeah, sorry. There are things as well. Linked data, I think, fails regularly. So writing queries. So Tony gave me a case in point yesterday. So the British Museum has a Sparkle endpoint, research base, and you said you spent an hour or 2 hours writing a query, and that doesn't work because they've changed the structure. So you can write something that works now but fails in a few months, or you can put some technology that's not going to exist much longer. So the British Museum uses Contentful for delivery of its content to its website. The contract's now finished for that, so they've now got to re-architecture all their stuff to get content out in a different way. That could be the failure of the choice of the person who's there. The British Museum digital team ultimately failed as well because the person in charge didn't reach the targets they'd set themselves. They left and then the department imploded. So it went down from 47 people to around 6 within 6 months. So it was quite a lot of job losses through that. So there are some really high profile failures in British digital as well. So there's a couple of projects like the National Online Museum project, Creative Spaces, which is now a porn site, if you go and look at that. Which people are going back through things and they go, oh, that's not quite what I looked for. So there's some quite high profile things that they spend millions of pounds on that just don't exist anymore. And you have to go through the Internet Archive to find a copy of it. And that copy can be really poor because it's only got 1 or 2 pages. So one of the things I've been doing recently is I really messed up one thing with Portable Antiquities where I moved a server and hadn't backed it up and I killed the drive because I typed the wrong command because I didn't realise the bit. And I lost a load of blogs, but I then found out the Internet Archive and I'm now reconstructing them because I don't want sort of the legacy of the work we did to disappear. It was my mistake and I'll fix it. So, yeah. Thank you.
I'm just interested in, well, actually the title, the Democratic Digital Interventions, because cultural institutions can traditionally be a bit silo-y and how they share information. Do you feel like some of these projects altered that culture of the organisations, or was it a struggle?
I think it did for the outside audience. I think internally, no. It made people feel as if they didn't have any power anymore over projects. So the Micropass project, for instance, the museum management didn't understand how we could allow people to make content from the museum assets without them sitting there holding their hands. So loss of control was one of the factors about me leaving the British Museum, because they decided that I was doing shadow IT or dangerous technology. So the shadow IT the IT department wasn't in charge of it, and it wasn't something they understood, even though they documented it. So it didn't. I think where I am now, they're quite willing to change things and allow me to experiment and to teach other people. Democratic institution intervention to me about teaching people like you and curators how to do this stuff and me not being the guardian of that knowledge. Because I think that you need to share it, and that's where digital humanities comes in as well. We're teaching lots of people to do this stuff. I don't know how big your course is, but I teach in museum studies in London, and that's 65 people. Out of that, say 10 people come and learn digital skills. But in their career, you could have 55 of that class then saying, I want to build a website, with no understanding of what website really means. And and then going, that doesn't work for me. But then you say, well, that doesn't work in the technology budget you've given me. So it's about teaching people how they can interact with each other. So I think that's what I was trying to come across the democratic side, about allowing people to make their choices, and they can vote in technology they want, and then say, this is how we're going to get to that point. And we empower the curators and the other staff, and volunteers as well. I think that's an important thing as well. We teach volunteers, not just people who work for the organisation, how this stuff works. And then I come to things like this, and I can sit with Renee for an hour and go through 3D, and we can learn things together.
Now, all the objects that are on the Sketchfab there, they have associated information with them. So, one area of that, of course, is creating the 3D image. Who's creating all the content that goes with that?
So generally,
you can create that in an hour, the image, but sometimes the actual content that goes with it.
So the sort of metadata describing the object on Sketchfab, or the content that gives it a narrative around it, is which side do you, or both of those are you thinking about?
Well, so you say that when you're coming back from lunch, you can do some scans in the Roman gallery, but of course that's just the image. Really, that has to be linked with information that possibly is already in the metadata related to it.
Yep. So generally, the objects I looked for, ones that I knew were documented on the content management systems. We did do some stuff in stores, and when we did that, I wanted to do research for the curator to actually think about the object and actually write the content to go with it, because I'm not going to do something for a reason we don't know why they want to do it. They had to actually come up with a research question about why that object was going to be scanned in the first place, and they had to be prepared to actually work on it. In principle, that sort of worked. Some curators never got around to it. Like they promised they would do, and then things overtook them. So, for example, things I've been doing recently, which perhaps some people might disagree with, is I've been spending my time when I go into London for meetings. I'll go to the British Museum for say half an hour, and I'll go and scan things that are quite famous, objects like the Parthenon marbles. Now, if you go and look at the British Museum website, the records for these are really, really poor, and the images are really old and out of date. And you look at them and go, is that the best you can do? But the content there is not particularly good, but they've documented it elsewhere on the website. So if I want to document it here, I have to spend quite a bit of time going to find that information. But generally in the museum space, I'm trying to work with the curator to do that content together. And sometimes with marketing, they want to do stories around it. But generally, I'm hoping they've recorded it. So I also run documentation at Fitzwilliam. We've got several years backlog there at the moment, which is quite scary. We've got 2 million objects roughly, so it's quite a big task. You can never 3D document every single object for the collection, I don't think. What were we talking about yesterday? Someone said about the Smithsonian, about how long it's going to take them? They said about 150 years.
Yeah, 150 years, I think, to 3D scan their collection at a fairly low res.
Yeah. So it's quite a big task. I think I shouldn't underestimate the content side.
Because, we have a Collection Explorer site that has, a few 100,000 objects on there. But it's not visited very much. And I think part of the reason for that is, the images are okay, but actually the information isn't that engaging compared to when the objects are viewed in much more context, when you have the stories about what made the object important, why it was collected. So is there any examples out there that you know of where people have been able to combine that three-dimensional scanning with more contextual?
There aren't any really good examples yet. It's something I want to build towards with the Fitzwilliam, where you think about the total record of an object. So you have 2D imaging, you've got the curatorial knowledge, you might have the marketing-led spiel that goes with it, and hopefully a link to the label text that you might find in the gallery, which could be translated on the fly for people, so there might be some way of finding that in the gallery. Then we might have the 3D model, you might have a podcast that goes with it to try and make something that's the generous interface that Mitchell's been talking about here. And that's coming out a lot on discussions at the moment in the UK about how we can be more generous with the information we've got rather than tombstone records. Now, one of the other questions I was going to have for you as a group is, do you see members of the public going into your gallery to make 3D models? Ever? It's so simple to do. So this is the Lachish gallery in the British Museum. This makes Turkey get excited because she likes this sort of stuff. This took me an hour to scan this entire room. This is about 25 metres of Syrian relief. I've now scanned every single relief that's on public display in the British Museum in my own time, and I've put them up on Sketchfab, and the museum hasn't got control of these objects. because I put them up. Under terms of entry, they say you cannot use the material commercially. So these have gone up under a non-commercial license, so they can't stop me doing it. And I've done it in my own time, with my own equipment. It's just photographs, and those photographs are available to the public. So Turkey could download these photographs and do the same things that I've done, maybe at a higher quality, because it's a better computer than I've got. But you can zoom into these models, and you can find out the story of them by annotation. And you can zoom through them and tell stories. And you can also embed audio with these as well, and pictures. So you could actually tell a really good story on this. So I could actually be giving a lecture on this frieze, this relief for people, and using this as the sole basis of how I deliver that lecture, rather than a flat image. And you can be zooming across it, and you can be making people come alive. You can also see the flaws of my scanning as well, when I'm not tall enough to get to the top. So things like that. So you can see the errors that people create. Or you might find that someone else in the audience goes, well, I've got some really good photos of that as well, so we can crowdsource and make a bigger model. So you may know of things like Palmyra, where people have been doing reconstructions of how temples used to look. And quite a lot of that is done from images they're finding on Google or from Flickr or places like that. So for the British Museum, I've now scanned 68 friezes. They're all available to download, so people can download these again. So you can take all of these and make a virtual reconstruction of palaces with this quite easily, I think. So maybe Turkey, you could give that as a task instead of your chariot, I don't know.
What are you taking the photos with?
I've either been using this, or I've been using a Sony D small compact. I think you can get pretty good stuff out with mobile phone now. And some mobile phone apps can actually allow you to make 3D models on the phone as well. I wouldn't try that with this type of size, but I think I took 400 photos of this to get to that point. Yeah.
The next generation of smartphones seems to be moving from
Yeah.
2 to 3 lenses. So
I think for museums it's quite scary.
Trigonometry you've got built-in photogrammetry, I guess.
Yeah. But I think for the museums, what's scary thing is that you cannot control people doing this. If you have a photographic policy that allows you to take photographs, anyone could be going to a museum and making 3D models.
Surely they should find that exciting.
I find it exciting. I think management doesn't like the fact that control is lost, because they think they're good set rights to how you can interact with the museum. So, is this loss of control? Well, it's loss of control of access to the information. It's not a loss of control of the object, is it?
There's an argument that it makes it even the original object more precious. Like if you make lots and lots of copies of the Mona Lisa and everyone has them on T-shirts, actually going to see the real Mona Lisa means that there's a huge queue for it.
Yeah, it's like bands as well, isn't it? Everyone wants to see Prince live, but they've got his records, but it's never the same as seeing him on stage. And you still want to go and see them. And I keep saying this to my boss, I go, this stuff it's the authenticity. It's like, I've been there. I've seen photos of places like I've never been to Australia before. I always wanted to come, but we can see it on film. It's not the same, is it? So yeah, I think this sort of stuff can bring people's imagination alive, and you can do all sorts of things with it. I really like 3D technology. I know it's not the be-all and end-all, and people tell me I'm doing far too much of this sort of stuff. But I see possibilities of what you can do and what you can do, not just me, what you can do as public or academics. You can take things out.
Yeah, no, I was just going to jump in. So, because I think you can be even more optimistic than you're already being. Particularly when you do seriously, when you say things about the authentic original and the copies that are being made. So, the background of this is that my whole PhD was about imitation and material imitation between objects and the idea of authenticity and value and how things are translated in different forms in prehistory, but it applies very much in the present. So from a computer sense, you'll know the term skeuomorphism. That's a word that archaeologists invented, and that's part of what I study. And actually, I think there's a really interesting case to be made that some of the 3D copies that you're making are, in many ways, more intellectually stimulating than the originals because of the way that museums display. So because museums put things that are three-dimensional and tangible and complicated and weird into flat, untouchable cases and then wrap them in abstruse text, it creates real distance between people and objects in a way that scans that are being made, while they're copies, they're not the original material, they're maybe not as financially valuable or as old or whatever, they're actually much more valuable from that kind of experienced embodied perspective because you're able to put your hands on it and wrap your head around it and get that kind of, like you were talking about the pop-up museums, that personal experience of the object in the way that a person in the past would have. And so you're actually able to have a more intimate relationship with the topic. I think
that's a perfect description of what we're doing there.
Yeah.
I think it'll take a bit of time for some people to realise this higher up. And I think what I'm finding as well with museum management or museum professionals as I go through my career is people between my age and 50, 55 who haven't been exposed to technology in the same way are quite scared of what you can do with it. I find some of the older museum management now who've got younger children or grandchildren and they're starting to use iPads and things like that, they're starting to realise the potential of what you can do with technology. And they're now coming up with new ideas saying, I've used my phone for this sort of thing in an art gallery, why can't I do it here? And the answer for me generally is we don't have Wi-Fi, so we can't. And we also don't have 4G or 5 or 3G in our gallery either, the walls too big. So it is limiting what you can do. So one of the things I think I should probably also bring up is realism as well. Be realistic about what you can actually achieve. And that's about with staff, the money you've got, the skills you've got. And I should also say that I didn't have any training in computers. So the job I got in the city was for a bet. My friend said, I bet you 50 quid I can get a job working in investment banking technology. And then 3 years later he said, I actually got £5,000 for getting you a job, and I spent it on a suit. And so I've just taught myself all the way through how to do this sort of thing. And that's usually from the internet or from colleagues. And I think you can learn how to do this stuff yourself. And it's just logic and reading instructions. And I know that men are awful about reading instructions, but sometimes I do read them. And you can get to a point, and actually sitting with people can make a big difference as well. There's something called pair programming, which makes a big difference in a collegiate program, where you sit with someone else, they look at your code and say, well, you could have done it a quicker way. So you've written 10 lines and actually you could do it in 2. And you get better that way. And it's the same as you, Renee, earlier. I learned some stuff about your work, and I think you learned stuff about mine. But I've never seen your scanner before. I was thinking, well, we could use that a certain way. So you learn from each other, and I think that's the important thing as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I think on that note, we might say thank you. We have some drinks and nibbles upstairs, so please join us. And Dan is here for another 10 days, something like that.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in following up with him, we can put you in contact. So great, thank you so much.
Very well.
Yep.